Since we're saying toodle pip to Dark Souls, now is a very interesting time for us consumer of Souls-like games, and an even more interesting time for developers hoping to cash in on the void that our beloved Dark Souls has left us. Has it really left a void though? We'll get onto that a little bit later. But whether we like it or not, Dark Souls is over, and other developers are scrambling their resources to try and get us hooked on their next big gem. But first things first, I just want to make it clear what I think a Souls-like is. Whether you think it's a stupid subgenre of the third-person action RPG, it's just that, a third-person action RPG. A tier? I'm sorry, I'm getting that name wrong, I know it. Death's Gambit, and well, there was this one game called Below, but I think that's a lost soul now. No pun intended. The Steam page doesn't even exist anymore, which is unfortunate, but these all look like fantastic games, but I wouldn't call them Souls-like. Sure, they both include people swinging mindlessly at spooky enemies, but that's where the comparisons kind of stop. So, just for the clarity, what do I think a game needs to have to classify as a Souls-like? Well, it needs to be third person. Games need to be in the third person perspective, that's pretty much self-explanatory. Next is a non-linear desolate world. Yes, Dark Souls 3 level design being non-linear, ha ha ha, I get it, calm down. Demon's Souls, Dark Souls 1, 2, 3 and Bloodborne offer some form of non-linearity surrounded by a sense of a land that's just, well, fucked, basically. And last but not least, there's XP dropped by enemies, which you can then use to improve your character or spend as a resource, which can also be lost. Now at face value, I understand this is a very broad term, as most, if not all RPGs have this, but the way Souls have done it is, well, Souls or Blood Echoes is the currency you use to buy stuff and level up. There isn't like a separate resource for each of those things, added with the fact that this XP can be lost when you die, and you have the opportunity to recover said XP, and you've got your classic Souls formula. So that's pretty much how I identify a Souls-like in my head. Sure, games like Salt and Sanctuary borrow heavily from this, but I just don't see it as a Souls-like game. That, and I'm not too fond of side-scrollers. Sorry Scar Studios, pretty good game though. So we've got our formula, so who's there to fill it? Well, there's a few, but these are the ones that have caught my eye. First, we have a little game called Decay of Logos, which started as a side project by Andre Costantino, I'm so bad with names, and then picked up by the team at Amplify Creations. And let me just read you the opening paragraph they've used to describe the game, it's quite something. Decay of Logos is an immersive action/adventure third-person RPG influenced by Nordic folklore and by J.R.R. Tolkien's high fantasy. The gameplay is heavily inspired by Dark Souls and The Legend of Zelda, with focus on exploration, combat, and resource management. The footage you're seeing on screen now is some in-depth stuff they've posted on their website, and the game sounds pretty incredible, honestly. But do you know what's most important? They're active. They're actively being transparent with the development process, which is a rare commodity in this day and age. Now, they started work on Decay of Logos back in 2015, I think, and I've talked to a couple of them over there, and they've assured me development is still in process, and they'll hopefully send me a copy when it's ready to be publicly played, which is fantastic news. For me, with the games in this video, this is the game I'm looking forward to the most. And again, just for clarity's sake, I haven't actually played Decay of Logos, so I simply can't pass judgment on it. Seems like a cool concept, devs seem cool, and I'm always a sucker for an indie dev. So yeah, this is certainly on my radar. But moving on to a game I have played. Now, I got contacted by the folks over at Cradle Games a couple of months ago now to play their new game Hellpoint. Right, this is going to be tough, and I hope they take what I have to say as helpful criticism, because what's there is okay, but that's simply it. It's okay. In my eyes, they sent out versions of the game to various members of the community, I guess, to be played way too early in its development cycle. The version they sent to me was filled with bugs, and to me, these games, Souls-like, rely on their initial first impression to really hook you, and it just didn't do that for me. The level design is lackluster, with areas just looking pretty much the same. I found myself getting lost as fuck. Even though the layout of the area was fairly linear, If I were Cradle Games, I would have waited longer to have something publicly available, as it can really tarnish a first impression. But let's look past that, okay? Let's give these guys some credit. Right, so these fellas might be onto something. I'm going to throw that out there. People have been asking for sci-fi Dark Souls for the longest time now, and this is really that. But just like I said in my Surge video a while back now, are they just jumping on the bandwagon in hopes people throw money at them because it's sci-fi Souls-like? I really hope that's not the case, because like I mentioned, you're onto something. But at the moment, the game just lacks passion, I think is the word I'm looking for. Everything in the game feels okay or mediocre, and that's just that. There hasn't been a single time I've said to myself whilst playing, hey, that was pretty cool. The majority of what the demo offers, now bear in mind demos are usually there to entice people to pick up the game, felt uninspired, unfortunately, but I'm willing to give the game the benefit of the doubt. This isn't the finished product, so like I said for Decay of Logos, I'm not going to pass extreme definitive judgment just yet. Like I said, you guys could be really onto something here. Take your time with it, release it when it's good and ready. You've nearly made your Kickstarter goal, and that's great. Now take your time. Release a good product that us Souls fans are going to love. Rushed games tend to be shitty, and shitty games stay shitty forever. Now obviously, there's also the Surge and Code Vein. I'm not going to go into the Surge, it's out pretty soon, so I'm going to cover that game in full when it's released, so make sure you keep an eye out for that. And then there's Code Vein. It's not coming out until next year, and I really don't have much of an opinion on it, because, well, there's not much to base one off. Bandai Namco are looking to replace Dark Souls, and people think Code Vein is going to be that. Is it? Well, how the fuck do I know? Trailer looked okay, not really into the art style. I'd have much preferred the art style in the same vein, get it, as the announcement trailer. But that was so much cooler in my eyes, but yeah. Like I mentioned, not much to say about it, but it's certainly on my radar. Okay, why the sudden surge in Souls-like in Souls-like games? When Dark Souls was still going through its life, not to say the game's dead, but you know what I'm saying, very few games were being released that followed the Souls formula to a T, obviously Lords of the Fallen being one, and we know how that panned out, didn't we? Listen, I love bland, boring, brain-dead, bald-headed main characters no more than the next guy, but Jesus, I don't even remember his name. Wait, what was his name, actually? Oh, Harken. Oh. Yeah, anyway, I do think the reason behind the influx in Souls-like as of late is because they know fans want more of this series and are going to be starved for it for some time. Yeah, I don't think developers know why we, the Dark Souls community, love the games so much. In fact, I'm pretty sure we don't know why we love the game so much. Sure, we can bang on about, oh, it doesn't hold your hand, the level design, the lore, oh, it's so bloody hard, I beat Dark Souls blindfolded, bound and gagged with Miyazaki himself shoving his sunlight maggot into my fucking dark sign, but I digress. I don't really know why I love these games, I just love the setting, the aesthetic, the combat to some degree. It kind of ticks all the right boxes for me, and when I play other Souls-likes, I can't help but compare them to Dark Souls. It's not fair on the game. But even as I'm writing this, the cynic in me is saying, well, if you have to compare it to Dark Souls, then the game hasn't done a good enough job at having original elements, which is what I talked about with Neo. And, let's not talk about Neo. I thought us Dark Souls fans had brand loyalty, but fuck me. Anyway, so how can I ask a game to capture that feeling I had when I played Dark Souls, but I can't allow a game to have similar elements to Dark Souls games because my stupid brain perceives that as a negative? Well, it's more than likely because I'm a dirty, stinking fanboy, and if it's not Dark Souls, then I don't want anything to do with it, and the game's developers should just get good at making games. Despite the fact I have not the slightest idea how to make games, but I can sit here on my ass all day and criticize games, but that's okay because I'm a YouTuber. I'm allowed to do that. And I'm sure it's very difficult to make games, it's just the recent Souls-like games that have cropped up appear to be mostly uninspired, uninterested, and trying its hardest to get their hands on your hard-earned dosh with no intention of capturing the same original Souls feeling the games provided. Apart from Decay of Logos, I do think that looks pretty cool. But moving back onto this Dark Souls void we mentioned earlier, is there really a void? It's not like we just can't go back and load up the older games and play them. I mean, shit, we've been doing that since 2009 anyway. So for me, there isn't really a void. I'll just keep trucking along, trying to tell people Dark Souls 2 did nothing wrong and you're all just a bunch of crybabies and get into a never-ending vicious cycle, and then I'll have to make a feature-length video defending the game. But at the end of the day, it's a fucking video game. If you don't like it, don't fucking play it. But with that said, I guess we could just shut up and wait for From Software to make their new game. It's not like they're gone. Kinda makes this entire video irrelevant. Oh well. I guess what's new? I've been Paragon. Take care, everyone.